What's up guys, my name is Ace, and one of the brand new features that came with Modern Warfare 2 is the ability to tune specific attachments on your weapon, and that's what we're going to be having our first look at today. Now keep in mind this is still fairly early testing, but I did dive quite deep into several areas of the tuning to see whether or not it's really worth tuning, and how much of an impact it can have on various characteristics of your gun. Now for those that don't know, weapon tuning is unlocked once you reach the maximum level of a weapon. You'll see that unlocks for you, and then when you go into the gunsmith, you'll probably notice several of the attachments on your gun will have the ability to tune them, and with that you can adjust 2 different sliders per tunable attachment. Now the elements you're able to tune will depend on your attachment type, so they will vary from attachment to attachment. And as far as I can tell, there is no tuning available for magazine attachments or laser attachments, but all other categories have the ability to tune based on what I've seen so far. But with the testing I'm going to be showing, I'm honing in on individual characteristics like aim down sight time or recoil, for instance. And without further ado, let's get into the results of my testing. So the first thing I wanted to test was aim down sight time if we just tuned one single attachment. So I have no other attachments on the gun. However, the exact same attachments are present in all 3 of these values that I'm going to be sharing. And the first thing we'll look at is the aim down sight time with this attachment on when no tuning is involved whatsoever. This is with the sliders set to default, and our aim down sight time here is 300 milliseconds. Then for the next value, this is when I tuned that attachment as far away from the aim down sight slider as possible. So I went in the complete opposite direction, and it turns out it was still 300 milliseconds. This is tested at 60 FPS, so there's no measurable change here. I'm sure there's some minor change, but it's completely negligible. And then with the third test, I did the opposite. I moved that slider all the way in the direction of aim down sight speed, so this should be improving our aim down sight speed, but once again, I got 300 milliseconds as a result. So while I'm sure there is a very minor change when tuning this one single attachment, it's completely negligible. You won't be able to see or feel this change at all. Having said that, that was just with one attachment. What happens though if we have, let's say, 4 attachments that all have the ability to change the aim down sight speed with tuning? What if we tune all of them at the same time and always go in the same direction? So once again, we start off with no tuning with these 4 attachments equipped, and now our aim down sight time is 434 milliseconds. Then when we move the slider all the way away from aim down sight speed for all 4 of these attachments, our new aim down sight time is 484 milliseconds. So this is about 11% slower, and that is a noticeable change to our aim down sight speed. Then with the third test, when we tried to improve our aim down sight speed with all 4 of these attachments, I was quite surprised to see our best aim down sight time is still 434 milliseconds. So again, there's a negligible change here when it comes to improvement, but you can harm your aim down sight speed. So far that's not looking too good for attachment tuning. And since it was a strange result, I wanted to take it a little bit further, and I went with the other gun that I currently have max level right now. This is the FSS Hurricane, and with this, I managed to tune 5 attachments for aim down sight speed, and these were the results here. As we can see, this time our minimum aim down sight tune is now 11% slower, but our maximum aim down sight tune actually did something here. It's now 367 milliseconds as opposed to 400 milliseconds, which was the default. So this is about 9% faster. So this shows that it's at least not completely bugged out. This does technically improve your aim down sight speed if you do it with enough attachments, but it seems like weapon tuning has a potential to harm aim down sight speed a whole lot easier than helping your aim down sight speed. So you may want to be aware of that when tuning your weapons. So that's aim down sight speed, but that's not the only value that I tested. I tested quite a few. We're going to pick up the pace here and blast through these ones a little bit faster. Next up is sprint out times, and there was only one attachment type that affected sprint out time. So with the MP7, with no tuning, our sprint out time is 133 milliseconds for our base sprint out and 250 milliseconds for tactical sprint out time. And then you can see the results here. If we go away from sprint out time with the tuning slider on this one attachment, it will make our sprint out time somewhere between like 7 and 20% slower, depending on base or tactical sprint out. And then if we go in the opposite direction for maximum sprint out speed, it's going to be 0 to 15% faster. Once again, that downside seems to outweigh the upside when it comes to tuning. As for the next value, this is aim walking movement speed, and with this one, I was tuning 3 attachments, and without tuning with these attachments on, our aim walking movement speed was 2.53 meters per second. Then when I went away from the aim walking movement speed in the slider, it ended up making this speed 20% slower, and then on the other end of that, when I tried to make our aim walking movement speed as fast as possible, this one increased our aim walking movement speed by about 12%. So once again, it's much easier to hurt your gun in this area than it is to help the gun when it comes to tuning. After that, we had a look at damage range, and our 4-shot kill potential with the MP7 with 1 barrel attachment on was 12.5 meters with no tuning. Then when I went all the way to the minimum with that attachment, it dropped it down to 12 meters, whereas when I went to the maximum, it bumped it up to 13 meters. So this one is quite balanced. It's a 4% decrease or 4% increase maximum. After that, let's have a look at recoil. And with this, I managed to find 4 attachments to put on the MP7 at the same time that have sliders that impact either our recoil stabilization or recoil smoothness. There is a bit of a mix here with both of those. But you can see there, these are the wall tests that I was doing in the different distances. And let's have a look at these in a greater detail for a direct comparison. And as we can see here, there's definitely a bit of a change, but again, I'm noticing that trend that we're seeing with many of the other attachments. If we go for minimum recoil tuning with all of these attachments, it noticeably harms that recoil pattern. There's a whole lot more side-to-side movement as it's kicking upwards, and the total magnitude of the recoil is noticeably higher as well. Whereas when we try to max these out for the best possible recoil, honestly, it doesn't really look that much better than no tuning at all. In fact, it almost looks like it's a little bit worse in some areas here. So it seems to have a fairly negligible impact on the gun when you're trying to improve your recoil, but when you try to go away from recoil, it definitely hurts the recoil on your gun. Now, one last test for stat improvements at least, I just wanted to have a look at idle sway and how much the weapon tuning can impact idle sway. And with 4 attachments impacting our sway, on the left we have no tuning, on the right we have the best possible idle sway just through tuning alone. And honestly, I'm not really noticing much of a difference, if any, here at all. So let's have a look at the opposite end when we hurt our idle sway with this attachment tuning. And with this one, again, it doesn't look like a major difference in idle sway. Your gun is still swaying around a decent amount. However, it looks like it is swaying a little bit faster than when we aren't tuning. So this is a bit more noticeable, at least, than that improvement. And as a result, based on all of this testing that I've done, this leads me to the conclusion that attachment tuning is probably not in your best interest, although it does depend on what you're going for with a gun. The reason I say this is it seems like there's always a potential to hurt an area more than you're going to be helping an area. And so if you go all the way in one direction, you're going to be helping that area a little bit, but you're going to be hurting the opposite end a very noticeable amount. Now, of course, the exception to this is if you really don't care about losing out in that particular area that you're moving away from, then sure, if you're really trying to max out for like the absolute best possible aim down sight speed or the absolute best possible aim walking movement speed, and you really don't care about hurting the gun in other areas, go for it. Tune away. However, if you are looking for a more balanced setup, it looks like tuning is generally not going to be the way to go for you. There is, however, one really big exception here, and this is a bit of a hidden gem when it comes to weapon tuning. I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet. This is with the optic attachments, one of the sliders is always going to be the eye distance. And what this means is you can have it so your eye is closer to the optic or farther away from the optic. And while this doesn't seem to impact any actual stats of your gun, it's not going to help your recoil or aim down sight time or anything. This is just a visual change. And this is something I'd recommend playing around with because this can have a noticeable impact on your performance in the match just by changing up the visuals on how far your eye is away from the optic. Now, if you want the biggest possible sight picture within the optic, you're going to want to move this toward the close eye distance. Whereas if you like having that gun a little bit more in front of you and pushed away from you a bit more with a smaller window with your sight picture, then you want to move in the direction of the far eye distance. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for today's video on weapon tuning and whether or not I feel it's worth it in this game. And with that, this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First up, what do you guys think about the results that I found here today? And second, after seeing these results, do you see yourself engaging with this weapon tuning very much? Or do you think you're probably going to stay away from it more often than not? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.